Summer in Madrid is never a gentle gift, but a baptism of heat waves. The midday sun is like melted gold, overwhelmingly smashing into every corner of the city. The asphalt is soft from the sun, and you can vaguely feel the sticky resistance when you step on it. And there seems to be fine sparks floating in the air. Every breath is with a burning sting, and even the wind is lazy and flowing, leaving only the dull heat, wrapped in the smell of the lawn floating from the Bernabeu Stadium in the distance, hovering over the cast-iron training base. Outside the iron gate of the training base, it has long been surrounded by dense media. Long guns and short cannons are like weapons ready to go. The camera is aimed at the inside of the base, and the shutter sound comes and goes like countless cicadas noisy under the scorching sun. All the focus, all the anticipation and snooping, was only for that man Leon Solana. This name in today's football is synonymous with legend. At the age of 22, he transferred from River Plate in Argentina to Real Madrid at a sky price of 200 million euros, and in just one season, he led Real Madrid all the way to the Champions League final, becoming the new king of the Bernabeu and becoming the belief in the hearts of countless fans. He has a God-given talent for football, with amazing explosiveness, dribbling like a ghost, shooting like thunder, and on the field, he is like an unstoppable football monster. Every breakthrough, every goal, can ignite the frenzy of the audience. But at the same time, he is also the most troublesome thorn for head coaches in Europe. Arrogant, rebellious, unruly, disobedient to discipline. Ignoring team discipline, being late for training is commonplace, and even arguing with the head coach on the spot because of tactical differences. He disdains to deal with media questions, and often uses indifference and ridicule to keep reporters out. He is never short of yin-yang on why any and around him, surrounded by models and stars, but no one can really enter his heart. Some people say that he is arrogant. Some people say that he is arrogant. But no one can deny that his football has a fatal attraction. Even if it is covered in thorns, it is still an indispensable core of Real Madrid. And it is the savior who can turn the tide at critical moments. At this time, Leon was sitting alone in the corner of the dressing room, isolated from the hustle and flow outside. The locker room was filled with the strong smell of sweat, the sweetness of sports drinks, and a faint smell of disinfectant water mixed in the hot air, which looked particularly dull. He wore Real Madrid's white training uniform. His trouser legs were casually rolled up to his knees. His right leg and ankle were swollen like a huge purple steamed bun. His skin was tight and shiny, and he could even see the raised green veins under the skin. The old team doctor held an ice pack in his hand and approached carefully, his face full of anxiety and flattery, and his tone was a little pleading. "Leon, quickly apply an ice pack. It can relieve swelling and pain, and if this continues, your ankle will be more serious." As soon as he finished speaking, Leon suddenly raised his hand and knocked off the ice pack in the team doctor's hand. The ice pack fell on the tile floor, making a crisp pop sound, and the ice cubes inside scattered out, melting quickly in the hot air, leaving a puddle of water stains. His eyes were gloomy like a trapped lone wolf, irritability, anger, and a hint of imperceptible panic in his eyes. And his voice was low and hoarse, but with an unquestionable threat. "Get out." The old team doctor stiffened, and the beads of sweat on his face slid down his cheeks, dripping onto the ground, mixed with ice water stains. He wanted to persuade him again. His lips moved, but he met Leon's eyes that were almost breathing fire, and when he reached his mouth, he finally swallowed them back. "Leon, your ligaments have reached their limit. The MRI report shows obvious signs of tearing. The doctor recommends immediate surgery. Otherwise, what?" Brian interrupted him suddenly, leaning forward slightly, and the sense of oppression instantly enveloped the old team doctor. "Otherwise, I won't be able to play in the Champions League final? I said that I don't have surgery. I won't miss next week's Champions League final, and no one wants to stop me." His tone was firm, with a kind of determination. The Champions League final is the closest to the top of Europe in his career, and he has been waiting for this day for too long. He wants to hold the Big Year Cup with his own hands, to prove that he is the well-deserved king of football in the cheers of the Bernabeu, even if it means paying the price of ankle scrapping. He is not hesitant. "So I said, get out." Leon spoke again. The chill in his voice was even worse. Every word was like an ice spit, stabbing the old team doctor coldly. The old team doctor sighed helplessly, shook his head, and could only pick up the ice pack on the ground in embarrassment. Bowed his head, hurriedly exited the locker room, and gently took it to the door, as if he was afraid of angering this beast that could break out at any time. Silence returned to the dressing room again, leaving only the sound of Leon's heavy and oppressed breathing and the faint sound of ice melting. He leaned back in his chair, slowly closed his eyes, his brows furrowed tightly, and his right hand unconsciously pressed on his swollen ankle, and the piercing pain spread along his ankle to his whole body, making him can't help but snort. He knew that the old team doctor was right. His ankle was overwhelmed, but he couldn't back down. He couldn't give up. He had to play in the Champions League final. At this moment, the door of the dressing room was gently pushed open, breaking the dead silence. The leather shoe stepped on the smooth tiles, making a crisp sound of click, 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 click. The rhythm was uniform and powerful, and in the dressing room full of sweat and male hormones, it looked particularly out of place, like a cold wind, suddenly breaking into this hot territory. Leon slowly opened his eyes still gloomy, and he looked up with a little impatience. I saw a woman walk in. She was wearing a slim, dark blue suit skirt. The skirt length was just up to the knees, outlining a slender and upright figure. The upper body was a blazer of the same color, and a narrow silvered eye was tied around the neckline, which made her temperament capable and cold. Her long golden hair was skillfully tied at the back of her head, revealing a smooth forehead and a beautifully defined neck. Wearing a pair of gold wire glasses on her face, and her eyes behind the lenses were clear and sharp, without the slightest timidity and flattery, only an ultimate calmness and alienation. She was carrying a silver medical box in her hand, which was clean and tidy, with exquisite patterns engraved on it, and was worth a lot of money at first glance. Leon's eyes stayed on her for a few seconds. A mocking sneer curled up on the corner of his mouth, and his tone was frivolous and disdainful. Who are you? New intern? He looks good and has a good figure, but this is not a beauty pageant site. Nor is it a place for you to cling to the powerful. Get out of here. Don't bother me. In his opinion, this woman is no different from those female models and female fans who take the initiative to send it to the door. It is nothing more than trying to use his fame to cling to the powerful and get some benefits. He had seen such a woman too much, and the contempt in his eyes was unabashed. But the woman ignored his ridicule at all, as if his words were just a gust of wind in his ears, irrelevant. She walked straight to Leon. Her steps were calm, without the slightest hesitation, and then she squatted down slightly, her movements elegant and neat. Before Leon could react, her slender and cold fingers pressed directly on the most swollen and painful point of his ankle, not heavy, but terribly accurate, and hit his sore spot at once. Hiss! The severe pain instantly swept through his body, like countless thin needles, frantically piercing his ankles, and like a blunt knife slowly cutting through his muscles. Leon stiffened in pain, and a fine cold sweat instantly oozes from his forehead, sliding down his well-defined cheeks and dripping onto his training clothes, fading a small wet mark. He raised his head suddenly, his eyes full of anger and murderous intent. His voice became hoarse because of the pain, almost roaring. Are you looking for death? He subconsciously wanted to push the woman away, but as soon as he moved, the pain in his ankle became even more intense, making him weak and could only clench his fists tightly, and his nails were deeply embedded in his palms to relieve the pain. He stared at the woman in front of him. The anger in his eyes almost devoured her. In Madrid, in the entire football world, no one dared to do this to him. No one dared to take the initiative to provoke him, let alone touch his sore spot so unscrupulously. The woman still didn't look up. Her fingers still rested on his ankles. Her movements didn't pause at all, and her speech was as smooth as reading the weather forecast, without a trace of waves, but with an unquestionable authority. I'm Elena von Strauss, your new chief medical officer. According to your MRI report, you have a severe tear in the ligaments in your right ankle and extensive contusion of the surrounding soft tissue, which has reached the limit of rupture, and now, you have only two options. When she said this, she finally raised her head slowly. Her eyes behind the lenses were looking directly at Leon. Her eyes were as sharp as knives, as if she could see through all his disguise and stubbornness. First, listen to me. Strictly follow my treatment plan. I can let you run through the Champions League final next week, run 90 minutes smoothly, and even let you stay in the best condition and score goals. Second, Continue to be like an orangutan in heat, yelling here, refusing treatment, and then missing the most important game of your career, missing the Champions League trophy you dreamed of, and spending the rest of your life in a wheelchair, reminiscing about today's stubbornness and stupidity. The dressing room instantly fell into a dead silence, and even Leon's heavy breathing became particularly clear. Elena's words, like a basin of cold water, poured down on Leon's head, extinguished half of his anger, and plunged him into a brief silence. He stared into Elena's eyes. There was no fear, no flattery, only absolute professionalism, and naked contempt for his superstar emperor. He has seen too many people who flatter and submissive to him. The media, sponsors, teammates, fans, and even the head coach all want to give him 3 points, but the woman in front of him dares to mock him so bluntly, warn him, and dare to use the coldest tone to poke at what he fears most, missing the Champions League final and being paralyzed for the rest of his life. Leon's eyes gradually deepened. He narrowed his eyes, looked at the woman in front of him carefully. The anger in his tone gradually faded, and he became a little more inquisitive and puzzled. Strauss? Von Strauss? The ice queen, who sent a scrap racer who was sentenced to death in his sports career by doctors in the Munich laboratory back to the track and let him win the championship again? Although he was arrogant, he was not ignorant. The name of the ice queen, Elena von Strauss, has long been heard of. This woman, born in a German medical family, graduated from Harvard Medical School, has extremely high attainments in the field of sports medicine. Her treatment plan is bold, hardcore, but has amazing results and has saved the careers of countless athletes, especially those who have been sentenced to death by other doctors under her treatment, can miraculously return to the field. It's just that he didn't expect that Real Madrid would invite this legendary female doctor and make her his chief medical officer. When Elena heard his words, the corners of her mouth curled up with a very faint arc. It was not a smile, it was more like a mockery. And her tone was still cold. I'm glad you haven't kicked your brain out yet, and you can still remember my name. After she finished speaking, she stood up slowly and looked down condescendingly at the football superstar sitting on a chair covered in thorns, and her tone was unquestionable. Now, take off your shirt and lie down on the physiotherapy bed. I'm going to start working, and I don't have time to waste with you. Leon stared at her and was silent for a long time. His heart was struggling. On the one hand, he was proud of his dignity. He was not used to being ordered like this. He was not used to being looked down upon. And he was not used to someone daring to speak to him like this. On the one hand, the Champions League final he dreamed of, the pinnacle moment he didn't want to miss, and the opportunity he would rather give everything to seize. In the end, reason triumphed over stubbornness, and he knew that Elena was his only hope, the only bargaining chip that could put him in the Champions League final. He slowly stood up. His movements were a little stiff. The pain in his ankles was still piercing. He gritted his teeth, endured the pain, and slowly took off his white training clothes, revealing his perfectly fine upper body, wheat-colored skin, smooth and full muscle lines, abdominal muscles, pectoral muscles, back muscles. Every muscle is just right, full of strength. That is the trace left by years of training, but also his arrogant capital. He didn't look at Elena, went straight to the physiotherapy bed in the corner of the dressing room, and slowly lay down, his back muscles trembling slightly because of pain and tightness. Elena didn't say a word, more and opened the silver medical box in her hand. The medical box was neatly arranged with a variety of advanced medical instruments, including shock-wave therapy instruments, biocurrent stimulators, and some injections and ointments that he had never seen before, exuding a faint fur smell, blending with the breath on her body, cold and advanced, dispelling the heat and smell of sweat in the dressing room, and also making Leon's restless heart inexplicably calm down a little. The next 3 days were hell in heaven for Leon, a mixture of pain and tranquility. Elena's treatment plan was more hardcore and cruel than he imagined, and every treatment was like a torture. On the first day, she used the latest shockwave therapy. The high-frequency sound waves emitted by the shockwave therapy device penetrated the skin and acted on his damaged ligaments, and each impact was like countless hammers, hitting his ankles frantically. The severe pain made him tremble. His teeth rattled. Cold sweat soaked the sheets of the physiotherapy bed, and the sweat beads on his forehead were like beads with broken threads, constantly slipping down. He clutched the edge of the physical bed tightly, his knuckles turned white from the force, and even if he almost fainted in pain, he didn't let out a moan. Didn't shout a word of pain. Elena stood beside him, concentrating on adjusting the parameters of the instrument, while speaking lightly. Without the slightest wave of tone, there is no shame in calling out Mr. Solano. Pain is a normal reaction of the body, and suppressing pain is not conducive to recovery. Leon's body stiffened slightly, his throat rolled slightly, and his voice was hoarse and firm. With his innate arrogance, in my dictionary, there is no word pain, let alone retreat. This pain is nothing to me. His back, tense from pain, perfectly muscular lines are more obvious, and sweat slides down the gully of the muscles, outlining a charming silhouette. Elena didn't persuade anymore. She just continued to operate the instrument intently. Her eyes still had the ultimate professionalism and calmness, as if the man in front of her was trembling in pain, just a machine part that needed to be repaired and had nothing to do with her. In the next 2 days, Elena joined an undisclosed bio-current stimulation therapy in a European laboratory. The tiny electrodes were attached to his ankle and thigh muscles, and when the current slowly penetrated the muscles and ligaments, the numbness and tingling sensation was more unbearable than shockwave therapy. Like countless ants, crawling and gnawing frantically in his muscles, and as if there was an electric current running through his body, making him convulse and almost lose control. Whenever this happens, Leon will close his eyes tightly, and the scene of the Champions League final keeps coming to mind. The cheers of the Bernabeu Stadium, and the picture of him holding the cup with big ears to support himself and endure the pain that ordinary people cannot bear. During this painful treatment, he began to observe Elena unconsciously. When she worked, she was extremely focused. Her eyes were fixed on the parameters of the instrument, her brows furrowed slightly, and her expression was serious, as if the whole world was left with only her, the instrument in front of her, and the patient in front of her. Occasionally, a few strands of golden broken hair would slip from her strands and fall next to her cheeks, and she would impatiently push them away with the back of her hand, moving neatly and delicately, without the slightest pretensions. The smell of fur on her body always lingers around him, cold and high-end, without the strength of perfume or the pungent smell of disinfectant. Like a breeze in the mountains, with a hint of coolness, dispelling the heat and pain on his body, and also making him feel a long-lost peace in this world full of fame and fortune and hustle. This kind of peace is something he has never experienced, something that those models and stars cannot give, and money and honor cannot be exchanged. He began to wonder what kind of story this cold, arrogant, and professional woman had. Why did she give up the privileged conditions of the Munich laboratory to come to Madrid, to Real Madrid, and become his chief medical officer? One day, in between treatments, Elena was sorting out the instruments, and Leon suddenly spoke with a little provocative and a little curiosity. Why did you come to Madrid, Fermati? Real Madrid's salary should be very high, right? Or have you heard of my fame for a long time, want to come and see my goals up close, and want to cling to me? Elena stopped the movement in her hand, turned around slowly, and looked directly into his eyes. Her eyes behind the lenses were still sharp, and her tone was still cold, but with a hint of imperceptible ridicule for the challenge. In Munich, I have treated too many obedient patients, who obeyed me and recovered step by step according to my plan. It is more interesting and fulfilling to cure a self-righteous bastard like you, a superstar who is unruly, refuses treatment, and regards pain as nothing, and watch as you go from being on the verge of scrapping to standing on the field again. Leon was stunned for a moment, obviously not expecting her to answer like this. He thought that she was either for money or fame, but he never thought that she was just for the challenge. He stared into Elena's eyes, looked at the seriousness and ridicule in her eyes, and suddenly burst into laughter. The laughter was hearty and wild, breaking the silence of the treatment room and dispelling a bit of the dull atmosphere. This was the first time Elena had seen such a defenseless smile from him. No arrogance, no indifference, no ridicule, only a pure, heartfelt pleasure. At that moment, her heartbeat missed a beat inexplicably, but she quickly hid the strangeness and still maintained a cold look. Leon laughed for a long time before gradually stopping. He suddenly stretched out his hand, moving quickly, undomineeringly, grabbed Elena's slender waist and pulled her towards him. Elena's body stiffened slightly, obviously not expecting him to suddenly make such a move. She subconsciously wanted to push him away, but was hugged tighter by Leah. The distance between the two instantly narrowed, close enough to feel each other's breathing. Close enough to see the reflection in each other's eyes. Leon's breath was sprayed on Elena's cheeks with a hint of burning, and his eyes were full of offensiveness, which was the greed and desire of the top striker in the penalty area, facing his prey, and his innate domineering and desire to conquer. Elena, his voice was low and hoarse, with a bit of bewitchment. In Madrid, as long as it is the prey I want, I have never missed. You are no exception. His fingers gently rubbed Elena's waist, feeling her slender figure, and the desire in his eyes became stronger and stronger. He thought that Elena, like other women, would panic, blush and heartbeat, would obediently lean into his arms, and would be impressed by his charm. But he was wrong. Elena was never an ordinary woman. Elena did not panic or blush, but leaned on his chest, her body relaxed, as if she was not affected by him in the slightest. Just when Leon thought she had compromised, her right hand accurately pressed a point on the back of his neck. Not very strong, but terribly accurate. In an instant, a numb feeling spread from the back of his neck to his whole body, and Leon's whole body seemed to be drained in an instant. And his arms no longer had the strength to hug Elena's waist, so he could only hang down weakly. He looked at Elena in surprise, his eyes full of disbelief. He never expected that this slender-looking woman would still have acupuncture points. Elena gracefully broke free from his embrace, took a step back, tittied up her suit skirt, and then put on her glasses again. Her face regained that cold and professional look, and said in a flat tone, "Mr. Solano, your heart is beating too fast and your emotions are too excited, which is not conducive to the repair of ligaments and the recovery of the body. Until your ankle heals, you are in my eyes just a bunch of delicate parts that need repair. No gender, no identity, just a patient. I have no interest in parts." After saying that, she stopped looking at Leon, turned around and continued to organize the instruments, as if everything just now had not happened. Leon stood still, his body still a little numb. He looked at Elena's back, looking at her cold and upright figure. The surprise in his eyes was gradually replaced by a strong desire to conquer. This is a desire stronger than a goal, a desire to conquer this cold, arrogant woman who is not swayed by him. In his life, there has never been a woman who dared to reject him like this, dared to ignore his charm like this, and dared to do this to him. Elena became the first and the person he wanted to conquer the most. He secretly made up his mind, not only to lift the Champions League trophy, but also to conquer this woman, make her his own person, so that, in her eyes, there are no longer only parts, only him, Leon Solano. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, it's the day of the Champions League final. The Santiago Bernabeu Stadium was packed, with 80,000 spectators wearing Real Madrid's white jerseys, waving Real Madrid's flag, shouting, cheering, one after another, almost overturning the roof of the stadium, and the frenzied atmosphere infected everyone present. In the center of the court, the lawn is neatly mown, with an emerald green luster, and the lights are bright, illuminating the entire stadium and every player on the field. Lion wore Real Madrid snow 10 shirt, standing on the pitch with a tall posture and firm eyes, but his right foot was still a little uncomfortable, and every step was accompanied by slight pain. But his face was still arrogant and uninhibited. Ilna was wearing a white doctor's uniform, standing in the medical area on the sidelines, holding her hands on her chest, staring intently at Leon on the field. Her face still had that cold look, but under her eyes, there was a hint of imperceptible worry. She knew that Lion's ankle had not yet fully healed, and it was already the limit to support him to run for 90 minutes, not to mention, the opponent would definitely make a malicious foul on his old injury. After the start of the game, the two sides played extremely fiercely, with frequent offensive and defensive transitions, and every scramble was particularly fierce. Lion is still the core of Real Madrid. He carries the ball, shuttles on the edge of the opponent's penalty area, breaks through the opponent's defense again and again, and creates shooting opportunities again and again. Just because of the pain in his ankle, his movements are a little slower than usual, and his explosiveness is also weakened a little. The opponent's head coach obviously expected this, deliberately arranged defenders focused on Lion. and told the players to foul his right ankle at all costs to stop his attack. The game entered the 85th minute, and the score was still tied 11, and the two sides fell into a stalemate. At this time, Lyon collided with the opposing defender in a midfield scramble in order to compete for the ball, and the opposing defender deliberately raised his right foot and kicked his old wound hard. With a bang, Lyon's center of gravity was unstable, and he fell heavily on the lawn, his body curled together. His right hand hugged his right ankle tightly, his brows furrowed tightly, his face was as pale as paper, cold sweat instantly oozed from his forehead, and a suppressed muffled snort came out of his mouth. The familiar, piercing pain swept through his body again, even more severe than the pain during treatment. And he felt his ankle as if it was about to break. The audience fell silent in an instant. The shouts of the 80,000 spectators disappeared in an instant, and everyone held their breath, staring at Lyon, who fell on the lawn, their faces full of worry and nervousness. Real Madrid's head coach, with a pale face, immediately stood up from the coach's seat and shouted to the bench to get the substitute striker ready, and he had decided to make a substitution. The staff of the medical team also immediately picked up the medicine box and hurried to Lyon, wanting to carry him off the field for treatment. But in the medical area on the sidelines, Elena stood quietly, not shouting nervously like others. Nor did she rush over like the team doctor. She just looked at Lyon, who fell on the lawn quietly, her eyes calm and determined without the slightest panic. Lying on the lawn, the pain almost made him lose his strength. He slowly raised his head, his eyes through the chaotic crowd, looked at the medical area on the sidelines, and looked at the cold and arrogant woman in a white uniform. At this moment, Elena nodded slightly. There were not too many words in her eyes, only a kind of trust and encouragement. That was the secret between them, the promise Elena gave her. She gave him enough magic to last the last 10 minutes. A special painkiller injection, although it could not completely eliminate the pain, but it allowed him to temporarily ignore the pain and stay in the best condition. Seeing Elena's nod, Lyon's eyes instantly became firm. He gritted his teeth, endured the pain in his heart, slowly propped up his body, and stood up little by little. His steps, although a little heavy and a little faltering, every step he took seemed to be stepping on the tip of a knife. But his eyes were terribly cold, full of stubbornness, firmness, and a kind of determination to break the boat. He shook his head and waved his hand at the team doctor, who ran over, signaling that he was okay and could continue to play. The team doctor was full of worry and wanted to persuade him to end the game, but seeing his firm eyes, when it came to his lips, he finally swallowed it back and could only reluctantly step aside, ready to deal with emergencies at any time. The audience, seeing Lyon stand up again, instantly erupted in thunderous shouts, and resounded through the Bernabeu Stadium again, more enthusiastic and louder than before. Everyone is applauding this stubborn and tenacious king of football, for his persistence, for his indomitableness, for his love. The game went into stoppage time, and in the last minute of stoppage time, Real Madrid had a great chance. The midfielder made a long pass and the ball passed accurately to the feet of Lyon on the edge of the penalty area. The three defenders of the opposing team immediately surrounded him, trying to stop him, trying to cut off the ball. They knew that this was the last minute, as long as they held the ball. The game would go into extra time, but if Lyon was allowed to break through, they would lose the game. Lyon stared at the ball under his feet. His eyes were as sharp as a knife. He took a deep breath, temporarily ignored the pain in his ankle. His body sank slightly, and made a breakthrough posture. His movements are still smooth and flexible, as if the pain in his ankle has never existed. He shook three defenders in a row, feinting realistically, dribbling sharply, and stretching like a waltz. Every turn, every change of direction was precise and neat, making the opposing defenders defenseless. After getting rid of the defenders, Lyon came to the edge of the penalty area. He lifted the right foot that was once on the verge of obsolescence. His knee was slightly bent, his thigh was forced. The instep was straightened, and he kicked out hard at the ball. With the sound of the whistling wind, the ball drew a beautiful arc in the air. Like a fallen leaf, accurately flew to the dead corner of the goal, with a tricky angle, extremely fast speed, and great power. The opposing goalkeeper tried his best to jump and wanted to save the ball, but the speed of the ball was too fast and the angle was too tricky, and his fingers only rubbed the edge of the ball and could not prevent the ball from entering the net. the ball went into. The narrator's voice instantly became frenzied, and he roared and shouted out these three words. The audience instantly boiled. The cheers of the 80,000 spectators almost shattered the glass of the stadium, and the Real Madrid players rushed frantically towards Lion, wanting to hug him and celebrate the stunner goal. Flashes came and went, illuminating the entire stadium in Lion's arrogant and resolute face. But Lion did not run to the corner kick area, did not strip off his muscles as usual, and did not party with his teammates. He pushed away his teammates who rushed over, walked through the carnival crowd, through the flashing flashes, and ran straight to the medical area on the sidelines, to the cold and arrogant woman. In front of the cameras of the world, under the gaze of 80,000 spectators, and in front of the long guns and short guns of countless media. This arrogant and invincible king of football, the new king of the Bernabeu, who was sought after by countless people and feared by countless people, knelt down on one knee in front of Elena. His movements are reverent and firm, without the slightest hesitation or pride. He stretched out his hand and carefully grabbed Elena's white, slender hands, which were cold and slender, had pressed on his sore spots, healed his wounds, and made him feel the long-lost peace. He put her hand gently on his lips, and on the back of her hand, left a fanatical and reverent kiss, which was full of gratitude, full of admiration, full of desire to conquer, and full of tenderness that he had never had before. Leon raised his head. His eyes were hot, full of affection and anticipation. His voice was low and firm, with a hint of imperceptible tenderness, which spread throughout the stadium and the world. I said, I will bring back the trophy. I will win this game. I have not broken my word. Now, can I stop being a part? The audience fell silent again, and everyone was watching this scene, looking at the arrogant superstar, showing the most gentle and pious side to the cold female doctor. The shutter sound of the media came and went one after another again, recording this historic moment and recording the softest moment of this iron-blooded tough guy. Elena's face that had been frozen all year round finally appeared a very light but moving smile. That smile, like the melting of ice and snow, like a spring breeze blowing on her face, instantly dispelled the coldness and alienation on her body, and became gentle and moving. She leaned over slightly, leaned close to Leon's ear, and said softly in a voice that only the two of them could hear, for the sake of your good performance tonight, tonight's celebration dinner allows you to help me choose a dress. Leon's eyes lit up instantly, and a bright smile appeared on his face, that smile pure and sincere. No arrogance, no indifference, only full of joy and anticipation. He held Elena's hand tightly and nodded vigorously, as if he had received the most precious gift in the world. The celebration dinner was held in a private estate just outside Madrid. The manor covers a vast area. The decoration is luxurious and elegant. The courtyard is full of all kinds of flowers and green plants. The moonlight shines through the gaps in the leaves, sprinkles in the courtyard, leaving mottled light and shadow. The evening breeze blows gently with a faint floral fragrance, dispelling the heat of the day. It is particularly quiet and romantic. At the dinner scene, the lights were brilliant, the clothes were fragrant, and celebrities gathered. Real Madrid players, coaching staff, club executives, as well as Madrid celebrities and sponsors gathered here to celebrate Real Madrid's victory in the Champions League and celebrate this glorious moment that belonged to them. The melodious music echoed in the banquet hall. People raised their glasses in celebration, chatted and laughed, and the atmosphere was warm and cheerful. Leon changed into a handmade black suit, well-tailored, perfectly outlining his tall and robust figure. He unbuttoned the top to buttons, without a tie, exposing his delicate collarbone, looking wild and elegant, with both the aura of a superstar and a bit of lazy handsomeness. He held a glass of red wine, shuttled through the crowd, accepted everyone's blessings, with a confident and calm smile on his face. But his eyes were always searching for the familiar figure in the crowd. Finally, at the entrance of the banquet hall, he saw Helena. The moment Helena appeared, the entire banquet hall instantly became quiet, and everyone's eyes were focused on her in unison, and they could no longer take their eyes off. Instead of wearing the white doctor's uniform during the day, she changed into a crimson backless silk dress, the silk material delicate and smooth. Under the light, with a soft luster, perfectly outlining her swan-like graceful neck and slender and exquisite figure, the backless design reveals her smooth and white back, with beautiful lines and reverie. Her long golden hair is no longer tied at the back of her head, but naturally draped over her shoulders, soft and flowing. There is no heavy makeup on her face, just light makeup, which makes her fair skin, delicate eyebrows and eyes, and a little more charming and gentle in her cold temperament, which is like the cold and professional ice queen during the day. Leon's eyes were instantly attracted to her, his heartbeat accelerated inexplicably, and the smile on his face became more gentle. He walked over quickly with 2 glasses of top-quality red wine, handed one of them to Elena, and his tone was a little ridiculous, but also a little admiration. I thought you only liked to wear a white coat, but I didn't expect that you wore a skirt and looked so good. Elena took the red wine glass. Her fingertips gently touched the cold glass wall. She shook the wine glass. The red wine slowly swayed in the glass, reflecting her cold eyes. She raised her eyes to look at Leon. A gentle smile curled up on the corner of her mouth, and her tone softened a lot, no longer as cold as before. The doctor also needs to rest, Solano. At work, I am the chief medical officer, and when I rest, I can also be an ordinary woman. Leon looked at her smile, looked at the tenderness in her eyes, and his heart beat faster. He thought about it a lot, just kept looking at her, stayed by her side like this, and pampered her as the happiest woman in the world. At this moment, an arrogant young man walked straight over. He wore an expensive custom suit. His hair was combed meticulously, his face was somewhat condescending arrogance, and his eyes were full of covetousness for Elena. He's the son of a famous real estate tycoon in Madrid. Fernando, relying on the power of his family, he is domineering in Madrid, and there is never a shortage of women around him. But he only loves Elena at first sight and never forgets. Fernando skipped Lyon, as if the superstar who had just won the Champions League and swept the entire football world was just an insignificant stranger. He walked straight to Elena, with a hypocritical smile on his face, and an invitation to Elena with a bit of flattery and arrogance. Miss von Strauss, I have long admired the great name. My horse farm, a few new thoroughbred horses, excellent breed, excellent quality. I don't know if I am lucky. I invite you to my horse farm tomorrow to ride a horse and relax. His tone, with an arrogance that could not be refused, seemed to him that with the status, Elena had no reason to refuse his invitation, and he was used to women obeying him. Leon's face instantly cooled, and the tenderness in his eyes was replaced by a hint of cold anger. He took a step forward. His strong body firmly blocked Elena's front and protected her behind him. He was a head taller than Fernando, and his tall body brought a strong sense of physical oppression which made Fernando subconsciously take a step back, and the arrogance on his face instantly converged a little, showing a hint of panic. The corner of Leon's mouth, with a cold smile, was not loud, but with unquestionable authority. It clearly reached Fernando's ears. Sorry, man. Her schedule has been bought out by me. Whether it is the arena or the racecourse, whether it is now or in the future, she belongs to me alone. You are not qualified to invite her. His tone was cold and domineering, with an innate kingly aura that was the self-confidence and authority that had been precipitated on the field and in countless victories, and it was also the protection and possession of Elena. In Madrid, no one dares to confront Lyon. No one dares to provoke his bottom line, and Fernando is no exception. Fernando's face instantly turned blue. He stared at Leon, his eyes full of anger and unwillingness, but he did not dare to attack. He knew that Lyon's temper. He knew that Lyon's influence in Madrid would be implicated if he really angered Lyon, and the gains outweighed the losses. He opened his mouth, wanting to refute and vent his anger, but in the end, he could only endure it abruptly. He could only glare at Leon fiercely, turn around in embarrassment, and hurriedly left the banquet hall, never coming back. Looking at Fernando's embarrassed back, Leon's face gradually eased. He turned around, walked to Elena step by step, stretched out his hand, gently held her hand, and then forced her to the edge of the stone pillar on the balcony, trapping her between himself and the stone pillar, not giving her the slightest chance to escape. He leaned over slightly, leaned close to Elena's ear. His warm breath sprayed on her cheeks. His tone was a bit ridiculous. And he was also a little possessive. Research samples. You just said to him, I'm just your research sample. Elena raised her head, looking at the possessiveness and teasing in his eyes. A smile curled up on the corner of her mouth, and her eyes were gentle and charming. What if not, Mr. Solano? Do you think you are no longer my research sample? Leon's eyes instantly became hot. He held Elena's hand tightly. His fingertips gently rubbed the back of her hand. His tone was low and ambiguous, with a bit of bewitchment. I will let you know that I still have many fields that you need to study in depth, and I need you to treat well. Not just my ankles, but my heart. After saying that, he lowered his head and kissed the red lips that haunted him. Instead of refusing, Elena stretched out her hand and hugged his neck tightly, responding to his kiss. This kiss is full of passion, full of love, full of conquest and conquest, dispelling all coldness and alienation, leaving only full of tenderness and affection. The moonlight shines on the mountains of Madrid, on the courtyard of the manor, on the two people who hug and kiss, gentle and romantic, in the banquet hall in the distance. The sound of carnival was still continuous, and the melodious music floated in the wind, intertwined with the sound of the two breathing. The wind on the balcony is blowing gently, with a faint floral fragrance, and the temperature in the air is heating up little by little, and love is spreading little by little. Lion knew that he had won. He had not only won the Champions League, won the applause and glory of the world, but also won the woman who could conquer him, heal him, and let him take off all his disguise. He used to be an unruly lone wolf full of thorns, a superstar wrapped in fame, fortune and pride. But Elena's appearance was like a painkiller, healing his wounds, healing his impetuous heart, and making him learn to be gentle, learn to protect, and learn to love.